I'm wearing my camel hat. It's got green in it, but nobody notices usually anyway. There's an argument to be made that Grant Stone makes the absolute best heritage boots per dollar spent out of anyone in the entire world. But the one thing that people have against Grant Stone is they're made in China. And it's because there's a cultural assumption that everything that's made in China is absolutely terrible because most of the stuff you get from China is terrible. So we're gonna cut this thing in half, run it through our test to see if Grant Stone still is that high water mark for best value heritage style boots in the world. Is deer leather acceptable for this nice of a boot? And how do they make it not completely stretchy like this B-roll? And can China, regardless of the price, make one of the best heritage boots in the world? And Grant Stone is a pretty young company. They started in 2016, but the 8 years previous to that launch in 2016, Wyatt, the co-founder, spent 8 years in that specific factory learning the trade, learning all the machines, learning the processes, learning how the industry works. And when an opportunity presented itself to make a brand with this factory, he jumped on that opportunity and created Grant Stone. So for 16 years, he's been involved in this specific factory, making some of the highest quality footwear coming out of China. And the thing that really separates them is they don't just get everything from China. They're sourcing a bunch of materials from all over the world, from Vibram, from kip leather on the inside, this deer hide, all this stuff that we're about to talk about isn't just sourced from China. The most popular question I get that is not about boots and shoes is, how do I grow my business? How do I take this seed of an idea, this little concept I have, this product that I'm starting to make, how do I take it from this idea phase to an actual business phase? And the answer to that question is data-driven decisions. You need data, you need numbers, you need to understand how much you're making, where you're making it from, how it all comes to the business before you can even start a business. And the way that we do that with our business is just through Shopify, because Shopify is a commerce platform that allows you to start, grow, and manage your businesses. But more importantly, it reduces the complexities of starting a business. You can run a multi-million-dollar company with a tiny team with Shopify because it's such a powerful platform. And over the last few months, they've released a bunch of new tools. Shopify Live View allows you to see all the details of where and how your customers shop. And one of the coolest things is if Shopify doesn't do something that you need for your business, there's over 8,000 apps that probably do it. So if you're a one-man shop dreaming of starting a business, if you're a business already existing and you're trying to streamline things and make things a lot more efficient, Shopify is perfect for businesses that make $100 a year up to $10 million a year. It's a powerful tool to run your business. So for a free trial of Shopify, please go to shopify.com/roseanvil. And thanks again to Shopify for sponsoring this video. So what is this boot? Well, the brand is Grant Stone. The style is the Garrison Gallon Teton Deer. Loud car. They weigh 1 pound, 13 ounces. They retail for $395 and they're made in China. And there's not really any specific positioning about this particular product, but for the majority of the description, it just goes over the unique leather that is this Gallon Teton Waxy Stag. So let's start going through the details, starting with the leather first, because it is very descriptive and they do a really good job of explaining it. They say, Gallon Teton Waxy Stag tannage utilizes white-tailed deer local to the Great Lakes states. Culled annually during the fall hunting season, the hides don't go to waste. Just that alone is super cool. That cycle of life, you know, using animals that need to be harvested and utilizing their hides and making them in China in and of itself is just a cool concept. But the actual leather itself is really interesting because this is tanned by Gallon. They're one of the least known US tanneries. And this is an alum tan, or an aluminum tan. They describe it as Gallon's proprietary light metal alum or aluminum Teton tannage is the base for this leather, after which it is retanned, introducing color, wax, and oils to dye, lubricate, and fill the typically soft, spongy fibers associated with deer. The retanning fills those voids and makes full, robust leather. The tannery finishes the leather, transforming it into the Teton Waxy Stag, lightly buffing the top grain before rolling an emulsified wax on the remaining grain. This color has an incredible pulp effect, highlighting the lighter tan base. So if you don't know anything about deer hide, it's a traditionally soft, malleable leather. My Uncle Kevin literally just gave this to me a couple days ago. It's a flint and steel set, a little fire starting kit, and this is deer hide. You know, this is that mountain man, it's that really soft, supple deer hide that everyone associates with deer hide. Not this. This is a tough leather. You can hear how hard that leather is compared to. So it's a really smart way of utilizing a unique leather that typically is not used in boots by refining the tanning techniques, by filling all this void, all this soft and suppleness with all the oils and waxes that make higher quality what it is. But more importantly, use that aluminum tan because it's not the same as chrome tanning. It's not the same as vegetable tanning. It's a specific tannage they use mostly for laces. And once again, for fortuitous timing, our leather laces that we released, we went with aluminum tan for the heaviest duty ones. We did the puncture test on leather, took 56 pounds, so not the most impressive score. So I wonder if at its base, even though they got all the wax and stuff in it, if it's just gonna be a softer leather, once it's fully broken in, it's never gonna be quite as strong. And so if you've got a broken in pair of these, send me a pic, because I'm really curious how they wear in. So it's a cool way of taking this kind of flawed material for boots that's more utilized in soft bags and stuff and making it applicable for boots. And what that does, it makes a really unique looking leather. You can see all the pull up you get from it because it's so heavily waxed. It's like when you bend plastic over and over, it starts lightening up. Same thing if you've ever like bent like I don't even know why you would. I feel like everyone's got bent at least one candle in their life and it lightens up. Candles are wax. This has tons of wax infused into it, and that's what this does. And we did the burn test on it, and that was the most waxy thing we've ever burned. It was so clear that this thing is impregnated with so much wax that it almost starts acting like a candle when you burn it. But one of the biggest flaws with deer hide is it is super stretchy. It's malleable. Like just look how much this stretches when I pull it to the side. You know, that's like an inch of stretch. Sorry, Uncle Kev. And as far as I understand, that comes from the actual fiber structure, not how it's tanned. And so fortunately, they have backed the leather with their typical kip leather that they use in basically all their boots. It is really high quality. I think they source it out of here in the United States. But the only part that's not lined is right here on the tongue. And so I'm gonna do a little stretch test just to see how much it actually stretches, to show you guys if they've solved that problem with deer or if they had to back it in order to get that strength. So the tongue right now, maybe an inch above the top. So yeah, that doesn't stretch as much as I thought. It still definitely stretches, and it almost molds more like clay because it is so heavily infused with wax. And you can see how much more it lightens up as you start working this and as all that wax gets lightened up from the movement. So you just look at the difference between that and the side where it's not been touched. And it's a pretty thick leather too. It's 2 millimeters thick. You look at the cross section, plenty of grain left in there. I'm sure it's buffed to try to give it a more even consistency, especially being an actual wild deer hide. And to me, that's part of the charm. If you have these flaws, you have these like scars and bug bites, that is indicative of real animal flesh. That's why we went so hard with the blood core leather, because to me, people need reminders that like, hey, this was once a living animal. Don't forget that the reason that you have this high quality product is because an animal grew it around their body. And to me, it's not morbid. It's a way to like honor the animal and remind people that, hey, the hamburgers you're eating used to be alive. Hey, the boots you're wearing used to be alive. Don't forget. So the fact they took this really non-boot leather base and made it into a really unique leather that really is unlike any other leather I've ever seen. Pretty cool to do. And I think it's definitely helped by that lining on the inside. And like I mentioned, this is kip leather. It's really natural. It's not heavy pigment on top, just a lot of oil infused into it. And the lining leather is pretty thick. It's 1.4 millimeters thick compared to 1 millimeter of most lining leathers. I love the hand details here, giving you the size, giving you the date, giving you the model. To me, this is up there with the best lining leather out of any boot. I love this kip leather they use. If you look further inside the boot, you can see it's got a half sock liner, a little bit of foam underneath, and then the rest of the footbed is all that veg tan leather and that true heritage way of making boots. And that's really what starts to separate Grant Stone for that sub $400 price compared to everyone else, is these are chock full of leather. At least they usually are. But this is the first time we've ever seen this kind of wedge sole on a Grant Stone. And so they might have had to change some things on the inside. They might have had to change the way it's adhered. But you can see it has a full length veg tan midsole. It has a 270-degree leather Goodyear welt. It even has a rand here at the back. I don't think that we usually see that in Grant Stone boots. But the one thing that it's missing compared to more work boots is usually work boots will have a little rubber slip sole that the outsole is glued to, and then all the layers above that are sewn together with that Goodyear welt. And where this is not a work boot, that's less of a big deal, but it is something to notice and take note of if you're buying a pair of these. And I like this wedge. It's a soft wedge. It's not gonna be nearly as durable as like a really hard rubber, but it's gonna be a lot squishier. It's gonna give you a more casual look because it doesn't have the heavy lugs that dirt and grime get stuck in. And to me, the wedge is the most comfortable outsole you can put on a heritage style boot. So I like the fact that they balance out the soft outsole with the really hard upper leather, because this waxy leather is gonna be tough to break in. And same with that full length leather insole. The durometer of the outsole is 50 Shore A, and the puncture test, crazy score at 301 pounds to puncture through. So let's cut this thing in half, see if there's anything else on the inside to help reduce some of that hardness of this boot. If they've changed anything because of this wedge sole, let's cut them in half. All right, we got it cut in half, and if you're not subscribed, consider doing it. It's the only way that we can afford to do this kind of thing, to show you exactly what you're spending your hard-earned money on, to keep these brands accountable. So let's see what's inside. These are starting to look more and more like Pacific Northwest boots, if I'm being honest, because you've got that full length leather midsole, you've got that leather rand, you've got a steel shank cork filling on the inside. It is a true Goodyear welt. It's a nailed heel. It has that full length veg tan insole. It's not quite as thick as that midsole and not quite as thick as like a Pacific Northwest boot. It's 3 to 4 millimeters, but that just means it's going to break in a little bit faster. It's going to be a little bit softer underfoot because you've got plenty of leather stacked under there with that midsole as well. And so that cork is just going to give you enough relief that it will compress to give you that like glove-like footprint. And you can see they've even tapered down that foam with Alden. You know, it's like a $700 boot, and they just like, we don't have time to skive it down. We're just going to do a hard edge. And one of the coolest things for a sub $400 boot has a veg tan counter. But what are the potential negatives? Where can you point to say like, well, you could fix this or compromise on that? Well, there is a little layer of some synthetic right above the shank. You could say that the toe puff synthetic, but you know, leather's tough to get thin enough to give you that discreet thin look. It's not a true toe cap, but it is a more dressy boot. The gemming underneath of the insole is a fiberboard gemming, which is exactly what you see in Red Wing and basically any sub $400 boot. Other than that, there's not much else you can point to say like, this boot needs help. You know, like maybe that slip sole we talked about, but it's not a work boot. So is this up to Grant Stone's quality? Is this up to that quality that people can make a pretty easy argument that this is the best heritage boot per dollar spent? It's right on par. If anything, they're getting better. You know, it's even more leather than we've seen in the past. They're using very specific materials for specific things. They're innovating. They're trying new, wild, and different things, and it's cool. You know, that's because that's what Wyatt at Grant Stone does. Like, he's not just trying to make some money and make a career out of making a boot. He's making some of the craziest and wildest boots with and sourcing materials from all around the world. And is Grant Stone single-handedly bucking this trend of everything from China's cheap and garbage? Well, they definitely are, and they're kind of the first ones that did it in a bigger way. You know, there's some boot brands that are coming out of China in smaller quantities, but Grant Stone is really the one that took on that vanguard attack of saying, we're gonna take on all the hate of every American that hates everything from China. We're gonna go so counter to the assumption of what people think comes from China that we're gonna make the highest quality boot per dollar spent in the entire world. And we've seen plenty of boots, almost twice this price, be half the boot of these. When a brand is just resting on their name, selling out their good name they built for several decades just to sell a terrible product to the people that are either brainwashed or unknowingly buying something other than what they think they're buying, similar to Alden, these fly right in the face of all those people that say, well, you can only get certain quality in America. You only get certain materials in America. Where this clearly is better in every conceivable way than any Alden we've ever seen. So, to me, Grant Stone still holding up strong, still one of the highest value boots in the entire world, if not the most valuable per dollar spent boot in the entire world. And so if you do have a pair of these, please let me know how this wears in. Does it soften up a lot over time? Does it continue to be hard? What does the color do? Because this is one boot that I might actually buy another pair of just to experience that. So thank you guys for watching, and check all the links out below if you want a pair of these. Check out the other Grant Stone videos that we've done. Check out our handmade leather goods we make right here in the shop to help afford to buy all this brand new stuff just to cut in half. And also shout out to Uncle Kev, a timely present that worked perfect for this video. So thank you guys. See ya.